Have you ever felt like, no matter how much you grow, how hard you try, how far you run, there's still something inside, quietly whispering, "You're not enough"? And have you ever wondered if that whisper didn't begin with you? What if it was her voice, her silence, her fear, shaping yours, before you even had words? I'm talking about your mother. But this isn't about blame. It's about clarity. About finally stepping out of a pattern that never truly belonged to you. Because if your worth, your relationships, your need to please, have always felt haunted by something deeper, then maybe, just maybe, you're still living by a script that someone else wrote. And in this video, we're going to find where that script begins, so you can finally decide how your story ends. Later in part 4, you'll see how perfectionism, burnout, and even that aching fear of being truly seen aren't weaknesses. They're survival strategies, born from a childhood contract you never signed. I once knew a man who spent his life trying to be the good son. He smiled when he wanted to scream, succeeded when he felt empty. Every win was a question. Am I enough now? But the woman he longed for lived only in memory, in the shape of a hug that never came. This video is for him, and maybe for you too. So if this touches something in you, stay. Let's walk this journey together. You've changed jobs, you've moved cities, you've read the books, taken the courses, tried to love better, to live freer. And yet, somehow, you still feel stuck, like there's an invisible thread tying you back to something you can't quite name, something that whispers, "Not yet, not quite, not enough." You start to wonder, is it fear? Is it me? Why do I keep circling the same emotional patterns, even when everything on the outside looks so different? Carl Jung would have answered with a quiet truth. Until you understand your emotional blueprint, you will always return to it. And for most of us, that blueprint begins with our mother. Not just the woman, but the image, the archetype, the first face we ever loved or feared. The one we looked to for safety, identity, and worth. Before we could speak, we absorbed her tone, her gaze, her silence. They became the language we now speak, to ourselves. You might think your adult struggles are new, but Jung would say, they are echoes, that anxious need to please, that quiet fear of being seen, that exhaustion from carrying too much or never asking for help. They began in the opening chapter. And here's what no one tells you. Even if you had a good childhood, even if your mother did her best, you may still carry unconscious contracts. Tiny beliefs signed in silence, like I must be perfect to be loved, or my feelings aren't safe, or love means sacrifice. These scripts don't live in your mind, they live in your body. In the way your shoulders tense when someone's disappointed, in the way your stomach tightens when you try to say no, in the way your heart races when someone gets too close. And perhaps in the most painful part, you didn't choose them, but now you get to see them. And what we can see, we can change. This is not about turning against your mother. It's about turning toward yourself, toward the child in you, still trying to be good enough, still waiting for a permission that only you can now give. So before we go further, take a moment, close your eyes, and ask gently, whose story am I still living? And am I ready to write my own? We often think of our mother as just that, our mother, A person, with a name, a voice, a history we may or may not fully know. But Carl Jung saw something deeper. To him, she was also an archetype, a universal image carved into the psyche of every human being. A symbol so old, it lives beyond memory. The mother is the first universe. Her arms, the first shelter. Her gaze, the first mirror. Before we know ourselves, we know her. Before we name the world, we feel her. Whether your mother was soft or stern, warm or distant, whether she held you close or held you at arm's length, her presence or absence became the blueprint for love, for how safe you feel, for how much space you believe you're allowed to take up, for whether you think you deserve to be here. It's not about blame, it's about pattern, because even the best mothers are still human, and humans pass on what they carry, especially the wounds they never got to heal. So what does this archetype do in your life now? It echoes in your relationships, in the way you seek comfort, approval, control, in the way you interpret silence, in the way you respond to conflict, in the way you love and expect to be loved. Maybe you keep falling for people who leave you emotionally hungry. Maybe you're afraid to upset anyone, even when it costs you your truth. Maybe you crave to be held, but don't know how to ask. These are not quirks. They are shadows of a mother story still playing in the background. And here's the twist. You might think you're reacting to this person in front of you, but your nervous system is responding to someone from long ago. The mother archetype is powerful, not because she controls you now, but because part of you intent still believes she does. And until you bring her image into the light, you'll keep meeting her in every partner, every friend, every authority figure, asking silently, "Do you see me? Am I good enough now? Will you love me?" The way she couldn't. But the person you're really asking is still you. There are things you learned before you even knew you were learning, not from words, but from what was never said, not from rules, but from glances, pauses, and the air between moments. Maybe in your house, crying meant weakness. Maybe anger was dangerous. Maybe honesty got you punished or ignored. So, you adapted. You became quiet, agreeable, pleasing. You learned how to shrink your needs, to keep the peace. You smiled when your heart was storming. You stayed when you wanted to run. You were good, so very good. Because deep down, you believed that love had conditions, and you survived. That's the miracle. As a child, you did what you had to do, to stay connected, to feel safe, to earn affection. But here's the hidden cost. What saved you then, now suffocates you. You say yes when you mean no. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You overfunction, overgive, overthink. And when someone asks how you're really doing, you don't even know how to answer. It's not that you don't feel, it's that you've trained yourself not to, because back then, feeling was dangerous. So you built walls, called them strength. You held your breath, and called it maturity. But inside, that younger you is still waiting for someone to say, "You don't have to earn this. You don't have to perform to belong." Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that's what these old scripts do. They write your reactions, your relationships, your reality, silently, relentlessly. But now, you're old enough to pause, to notice, to ask, who taught me this silence? And what would happen if I finally broke it? Because healing often begins with a single honest word, whispered not to someone else, but to yourself. What if the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're doing too much, but because, deep down, you're still trying to earn something you should have always had? Love. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet kind that says, you are enough, just as you are. But maybe that's not how it was. Maybe love came with terms, with grades, with obedience, with silence. Maybe affection was measured in how well you performed. Maybe approval was only given when you didn't ask for anything in return. Maybe good meant invisible, or perfect, or never too much. So you learned to be what they needed, and forgot to ask what you needed. You became excellent at reading rooms, at anticipating moods, at fixing problems that weren't yours to solve. And people praised you, called you strong, reliable, impressive, but inside, you were tired. So tired. Because when love is conditional, you never stop working, you never stop proving, you never stop wondering, will this be enough? Will I be enough? That's the trap. The burnout isn't from life, it's from a belief. A quiet, inherited belief that says, only when I succeed can I rest. Only when I please can I be loved. Carl Jung taught that our adult behaviors often trace back to unmet needs in childhood. But those needs didn't vanish. They just changed shape. So you chase perfection, chase applause, chase milestones. But when you reach them, it still feels empty, because it was never about the goal. It was about the hole, the one left by a love that felt just out of reach. But here's what you need to hear now. You were never meant to earn love. You were meant to receive it. Not because you did everything right, but because you exist. So breathe. Let go of the mask, the pressure, the proving, and ask yourself, gently, what would my life look like if I stopped chasing love and started remembering that I was always worthy of it? You've been the helper, the achiever, the peacekeeper, the strong one, the one who holds it all together, even when you're falling apart inside. But what if those roles aren't really you? What if they're just armor, crafted long ago, to earn love, to stay safe, to belong? Carl Jung called the process of becoming your true self individuation. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Think back, before the shoulds and musts, before you were praised for being quiet or punished for speaking truth, before you shaped yourself to fit someone else's idea of good. What did you love? What made your heart feel alive? Who were you before the masks? Individuation asks a simple, sacred question. Who am I when I stop performing? But the answer isn't found in a book. It's uncovered in the quiet, in the discomfort, in the moments you dare to disappoint, to say no, to be misunderstood. Because that's where freedom begins. Not when everyone claps for the version of you they like, but when you finally clap for the version of you that's real. It takes courage to walk away from roles that kept you safe, to grieve the part of you that survived by being someone else. But it also brings peace, a deep, anchored peace. That comes from no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. So ask yourself, what parts of me feel true? And what parts feel like costumes? Where am I still performing? And who am I when the stage goes dark? This isn't rebellion, it's reunion. A coming home to the self you left behind in order to be loved. And now, you get to love them back. You think you're upset because your partner didn't text back, or because your boss didn't praise your work, or because your friend cancelled again. But deep down, You're not just reacting to the present, you're responding to the past. Carl Jung called it projection, when we take unresolved emotions from our earliest relationships and cast them onto the people in front of us. Your partner forgets to say, "I love you," and your chest tightens like a child left waiting. Your coworker criticizes your idea, and you hear the echo of a voice that once made you feel small. You crave approval, not because you're vain, but because, as a child, approval meant survival. We carry these echoes into every room we enter. We hand others the script and ask them to play roles they never auditioned for. Make me feel worthy. Make me feel safe. Give me what she couldn't. But they can't. They're not your mother. They're not your father. And most of all, they're not responsible for your healing. Here's the painful truth. As long as you project the past onto the present, you give away your power. You make others responsible for wounds they didn't create. And worse, you miss the person standing in front of you. You don't see them. You see a shadow, a role, a ghost from your childhood, wearing someone else's face. So how do we stop? It starts with noticing. That spike of fear, that urge to withdraw, that hunger for reassurance. Pause. Ask yourself, who does this really remind me of? What part of me is still asking to be held? Because when you see the projection, you reclaim your reflection. You realize you don't need your partner to soothe the child in you. You don't need your friend to undo your mother's silence. You need you. You to show up, to say, "I see you," to say, "You're safe now," to say, "I'm here and I'm not leaving." This is how you break the spell. Not by changing them, but by choosing to see yourself clearly. What if the love you've been searching for isn't out there, but in here? In the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. In the way you hold your own heart when it breaks. You see, healing doesn't always come from others finally showing up. It often begins when you do. This is what psychologists call reparenting, becoming the mother, the father, the protector that you never fully had. It's not about blame. It's about becoming, about choosing, every day, to give yourself what was once missing. Maybe as a child, you weren't allowed to cry. Now, you sit with your pain instead of shaming it. Maybe you were told to be strong. Now, you give yourself permission to be soft. Maybe you had to earn every drop of affection. Now, you whisper, "You are loved, just as you are." Reparenting isn't grand, it's quiet. It's brushing your teeth even when you're numb. It's saying no when you're used to people-pleasing. It's holding your own hand in the dark. It's writing letters you'll never send, speaking truths you've buried, and making space for all the parts of you that were once too much or not enough. You become the parent your inner child needed. Firm, but kind. Honest, but gentle. Present, when no one else was. And over time, something shifts. You stop begging for love. You start offering it. You stop chasing validation. You begin standing with quiet, rooted self-respect. This is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice. But each act of self-kindness is a brick in the foundation of your freedom. So next time your inner critic screams, ask, "Whose voice is that?" And then replace it. Say the words your child self never heard. "I'm proud of you. I believe you. You're safe now." Because now, you're not just surviving, you're parenting the most sacred child of all, yourself. She gave you life, and maybe pain. She gave you lessons, and maybe silence. She gave you stories, and maybe scripts, that still shape how you breathe, how you love, how you ache. But here's the truth Carl Jung knew. Healing doesn't begin when you forget your mother. It begins when you understand her, not as a goddess, not as a villain, but as a woman, a human, with her own fears, her own wounds, her own unloved child inside. When you stop seeing her as a myth, you free yourself from the spell. You stop living as her reflection and begin living as your own. That doesn't mean erasing the past. It means holding it with open eyes and a softer heart. Because the more you understand her story, the less you carry it as your own. You realize she wrote the first chapter, but the pen is in your hand now. So what will you write next? Will you keep chasing old love in new places? Will you keep proving, performing, perfecting, to feel worthy? Or will you pause and choose differently? This is your turning point, not with anger, not with blame, but with awareness and tenderness. You may still hear her voice inside your own. You may still feel her absence in certain moments. But now, you meet those echoes with presence. You offer the love she couldn't give, not to her, but to the child she left behind, you. And in doing so, you don't just break the cycle, you rewrite it. You become a living bridge between what was and what can be. So today, take a breath, look inward, and whisper to yourself, I see you, I believe you, and I'm here for the rest of the story. Because now, your true life begins.